Hi there, and welcome to Enhancing the Human Experience. I'm Mark Phillips, and this is the podcast designed to help you get the most out of your business and your life. My guest today is Chris Karamyar. Chris is the founder and host of Rise of Humanity podcast. Rise of Humanity is a training ground for spiritual warriors that have been called upon to make powerful change in the world. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mark. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, after listening to a number of your podcasts, I've got a number of questions here. You are doing amazing things and having some amazing guests on your show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a great journey. I mean, I've only started like literally 8 weeks ago, and just blasting it and just putting myself out there, reaching out to people who maybe I think are above my level, and just going for it. And a lot of them have said yes, and I've managed to get some great interviews now. So I'm starting to get into a flow, and I'm just looking forward to the future, really.
Oh, absolutely. Like I say, I mean, you are definitely hitting the ground running. So tell us about your journey up into this point. What brought you here to start the podcast and this movement?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a long story. I suppose throughout my 20s, I've never really been settled, that increasingly became very aware when I reached my mid-20s, and I just felt completely lost and disconnected. I knew I had this feeling that there was more out there for me all the time. There was something greater that I had to do in the world, but I could never put my finger on that thing, and it led me through years of kind of just disillusionment, and just kept trooping on. And it took me to South America, it took me through loads of different jobs, and I finally got to this point where I recognized, I really began to feel there was something more out there for me, and I recognized that I was stuck in this pattern of coming up to that opportunity and then stepping back through fear. And I finally got to that point where I could take that leap and break through and start the podcast. So yeah, really for me, it's part of a brand new path, a path really that I've always been on, but the start of a brand new journey for me of making my change in the world and doing what I feel that I was put on this earth to do.
Yeah. So talk a little about that, stepping out of it. Almost sounds like you were, like a lot of people, conforming to a greater or lesser degree with society and going along the path that you should do. Talk about, stepping outside of that and getting into this type of arena.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trap that a lot of people get into, but I've resisted it, and I'm grateful for the emotional pain that I felt and the disillusionment throughout that time, because that was a sign to me that I was resisting settling for a life that I didn't really want to live. So yeah, it was just doing loads of different jobs, and kind of always having in the back of my mind that there was something more out there for me. And I would go through these cycles of, I'd find a job. I was working in hospitality, and I would be like, all right, I'm going to do this, settle down, and this will do for a few years. And then after about 6 months, I'd get that signal from the universe and within myself, that intuitive feeling that there's more out there, and I would leave. I'm very grateful to have parents who are willing to be able to put up with me and allow me to be able to kind of experiment in the world in this way. And I kept getting a job, leaving, and I finally realized that I had been waiting to become the person that I thought I needed to be before I went out and started living my purpose, living my mission. And I finally had that realization that the only way I would become that person is by doing exactly the very thing that I'm afraid of doing. So when I had that huge breakthrough in awareness, that led me to be able to say, I'm going to start this podcast. I'm not going to settle for a life which I just come to from fear. I'm going to live an inspired life, really. So that's really the process of how it all fell into place.
Yeah, I think that story is fairly common. We live small, we live within the conforms and constructs of society for so long, but the human spirit, it is expansive, and its nature is to grow. And so your story really illustrates that, and I think that's fantastic that you eventually pushed through that, that fear and went into doing this. Because I'll tell you, I've listened to a number of your shows now, and I take it you don't have a background in broadcasting or doing this kind of thing?
No, I mean, I'm a musician, so I've done a few gigs, but I've not done any podcasting, no.
Well, your presence on the mic is excellent, and your whole show is just fantastic. So how did you develop the content, and what made you kind of come up with this spiritual warrior? How'd you come up with that theme?
Well, it's kind of a theme that's been running through my life for, let's say, the last 3 or 4 years. When I was around, I'd say about 24 years old, I started reading a lot of books and kind of absorbing a lot of information about the universe, about the bigger questions of life, and why we're really here. And that kind of really expanded my mind. And over the years, running alongside that, I became very interested in personal development, and I found it extremely exhilarating, and just being able to grow in that way. And it was a gradual process, but over the years, it kind of began to become part of my identity, this spiritual side. And I think it's the core of every human. It's not really something you have to cultivate. It's there already, and it's there within everyone, and you just have to uncover it. And I became increasingly aware of that, and began to realize for me that the only way that humanity can really move forward is to tap into this spiritual awareness. And that kind of inspired me, and I realized the power of that, and that inspired me to want to bring that to other people. So yeah, it just got to the point where it's like spirituality is just the norm for me. It doesn't really feel like I don't even have to say spirituality, really. It's just what is. And yeah, I was just completely and totally inspired to start bringing that to other people, and that's the path I'm on, and that's the direction that I'm going in.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I love to think of ourselves as being spiritual beings having a human experience, but more often than not, we get in the world, and we get focused on the physical world and the material world, and we forget our bigger divine aspect, and it causes problems for people if we squash that down.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a huge. It's a big problem that I'm seeing in the world. Is to reach higher levels of fulfillment, I think you have to be able to touch into that spiritual side of yourself. It has to be there, and if you shut that off, you will probably live a relatively unfulfilling life. But one thing I would say is that on the flip side of that, it depends how far along you are on this spiritual path, but it can sometimes become overwhelming, absorbing all this information, and sometimes you kind of begin to almost lose touch with the human experience because your mind's expanding at such a huge rate. And that's something which does happen for me occasionally, and I have to work hard to stay grounded. And like just today, I was out on a walk, and I had this huge download of information that I need to embrace the human experience, because I'm here for a reason, to learn. And it's not, while it's very important to cultivate your spirituality, it's also, I think, important to not resist the human experience too much, and try and embrace it as much as your spirituality. And having those two running side by side, I think, is the key to a fulfilling life.
Yeah, it's like the Zen saying that, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry wood, and after enlightenment, chop wood, carry wood, right?
Yeah,
we are human beings and spiritual.
Yeah.
So why is this movement important to you? What are you seeing in the world that's calling you to do this?
Well, potential, basically. I think that the world is destined for greatness, and it's absolutely possible that we can live in a paradise, and I see really no reason why that can't become the reality of humanity. So for me, I'm just driven to uncover that and release that potential, and I can see it all around me. So for me, my kind of mission really is to raise the vibration of and consciousness of humanity, because I know that we can all live lives of fulfillment, and there's no reason why we can't. So for me, that's just where all the passion comes in. It's absolutely possible, and that really is what I want to do.
I love that. Yeah. So you talked about some of the things that occurred on your journey. Were there any major pivotal points, really big wake up calls that happened on your journey that bumped you back onto this path or made you do like a 180?
Yeah. Well, when I was around 24, before I went on my trip to South America, that was a pretty big turning point for me, because I was at a point where I was earning decent money at work, and I could have settled for a life that really didn't fulfill me, and I could have bought a house and done the career thing and all that, but I intuitively felt that if I do that, I will become miserable, and I just said, I need to get away, I need to do something. So I booked this big trip to South America, and during that, I booked the trip, probably it was over a year in advance I started planning it, so it was a huge waiting, and I was just like, oh God, I wish this year would move along as quickly as
wow,
possible.
A year's a long time.
Yeah, and it was very difficult, and actually it reflected in my reality, the way my mindset, because my life began to sort of, I wouldn't say crumble, but it took a downturn. Work became worse. Everything just seemed to be moving downwards, and it was all boiling up to that point where I could just get on that plane and get away. And that 6 months was very transformative for me. It really just lifted a huge amount of heavy energy that I felt about life, and it was about 3 months into the trip where I really actually began to feel better. But the big turning point for that in that trip was I was reading some books along the way, just on my Kindle and stuff, and I kind of discovered this concept of personal responsibility, which is hugely powerful, and basically understanding that you are the creator of your own reality, and you can't blame the universe. It's not out to get you. You can't blame anyone else. Stop playing the victim. And I realized, looking back over that year when my life kind of took a downturn, that I was responsible for everything. So I came out of that trip with a completely different mindset, and from there, that was 2 years ago, and it hasn't been a long journey up to this point, but from there really it was an upward trajectory, shifting from that victim mindset into an empowered mindset, really.
Wow, and that's so true. There's nothing like travel to shift your mindset and give you a new perspective, right? Yeah,
and it gives you breathing room. When you create that kind of space in your life, you will just automatically begin just downloading information from the universe, and that will shift into your life automatically. You don't even have to try. So traveling is definitely a great way to expand your mind and your horizons. And I'm not an avid traveler. I never really talked about traveling, and people laughed when I said I was going on a trip to South America, because I'd never done anything like that, and I was just the person that just, right, I'm going away for 6 months. So I probably wouldn't do that again. I'm not an avid traveler. I'd like to see more of the world, definitely, but for me, it was very much, I can see looking back, it was just a period of time which I needed to just let my mind clear and start seeing the bigger picture, really.
Yeah, well, that's like jumping into the deep end of the pool, going away for 6 months after not being a world traveler. That kudos to you for that. Well, where did you go? What places did you tour down there?
Pretty much the whole continent except Venezuela and the tiny little countries. So Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, Colombia.
Wow,
yeah.
So you were on the move. You were seeing the sights and getting it done.
Yeah, loads of big stuff. Machu Picchu, Galapagos Islands, trekked on glaciers, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, oh, wow. Yeah. How was that? Were you scared to do that?
No, it's weird. I was literally did not feel nervous at all. We were on the platform. It was over Rio de Janeiro, and we drove up this big mountain, and we were getting set up, and I was getting hooked up to the hang glider, and I wasn't nervous at all. Didn't feel anything, but it was literally the last second as I was running off the ramp, I was like, oh my God, and it suddenly hit me. And I was just like, oh, it's too late to stop now. But up to that point, I didn't feel nervous. I was quite surprised about that, to be honest.
Now,
Yeah,
are you in a
fun.
tandem? Are you in a tandem setup with the instructor, or are you by yourself?
That was a tandem one, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So you're hang gliding over Rio there.
Yeah.
Wow,
Land
that's
on-
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Getting back to your podcast here, I listened to your full interview with Peter Sage the other day, just last night, as a matter of fact. Fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you set that up? I mean, he's a major player.
Yeah, well, I've been following Peter for about 3 years, so he's definitely been a big inspiration for me. And when he actually went to prison for contempt of court, I messaged him on Facebook, and when he got out, I said, "How are you doing?" and everything. And when he got out, he said, "Yeah, doing great. Appreciate the support." And I messaged him and said, "I've set up this new podcast, Rise of Humanity. Would you consider coming on the show?" And I wasn't really expecting much, and he just said yes. So,
Wow,
so that was it. Really. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. But yeah, what a guest to get on the show, and everyone was like amazed when I told them as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, that interview, I was at the edge of my seat the whole interview. Him talking about his experience in prison and keeping a positive, optimistic mindset. That is a huge feat,
Yeah, the level of conditioning and personal power it takes to do that is absolutely remarkable, and it does take time. It takes years to do if that's the path you're on. But yeah, for him to be able to pull that off is absolutely just incredible and really inspiring.
Yeah, and you said you've read some of his stuff, and it sounds like he kept a journal and wrote letters in prison, and you dug into those and read those. I mean, yeah, kudos to you for that interview. Yeah,
it was like I read about 70 pages of his journal, but it's actually written. It's nearly the size of a whole book. He's in the process, I think, of releasing like a 11-part journal. So looking forward to the rest of it. But I read the first 2 parts, and they were absolutely incredible. Yeah, so just made for a really great interview, really.
Oh yeah, I mean, I thought the interview was fantastic, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes to this interview because I want people to have access to that. Again, the experience was fascinating.
Awesome, I appreciate that. It's definitely something people should hear. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. So, looking at your Instagram page, I see you're into dancing and music, and you got some dance skills and some music skills. So, how do you? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's from a very early age. I mean, before I was 10 years old, I was playing guitar, and before that, I used to dance on the table when I was a kid to Michael Jackson. So I've always been quite musical, and then. Yeah, I never really stopped. And when I got to sort of age 18 and I started playing the piano keyboard, just teaching myself and started setting up a home studio, that's when I began to take it really seriously. And that for a while, I kind of had my goals set on becoming a famous musician. That was the kind of the big goal in my early 20s. And it was a very challenging time because as much as I absolutely loved doing the music and I was passionate about that, I very much tied my identity to my music very strongly, and that played a huge part in me coming out of this victim mindset, because I was in this mindset as, if I don't become famous and rich, then my life will be a failure. And I carried that with me for years, and luckily I was able to break out of that by the end by the time I accepted it, I kind of laughed about it. It didn't really bother me. But so now it's it's just about the passion, really. It's just kind of a very enjoyable side hobby that I love doing from time to time.
Yeah, well, like I said, I saw your Michael Jackson-ish type dance, and that was blown away. I mean, you do have some skills, and I can see why you wanted to parlay that into something more.
Yeah, definitely. I was convinced for years that I was going to make it, and I genuinely believed that I had the talent to do it. But the first of all, I don't think I was aligned with that. I think I had a greater mission of just becoming rich and famous. I don't think that was very authentic. And secondly, the big trap that I fell into is I didn't take action. All I did was kind of record all this amazing music, I thought was amazing, and I recorded those videos, which I loved, but I was never really putting myself out there and taking action, I kind of got stuck in that kind of dream mindset. So that was the thing that really held me back. But I don't think I was meant to do it in that way, and now I'm just glad to be able to enjoy it just as a side passion, really.
Yeah, that your story sounds very similar. Are you familiar with Mark Manson and his work?
Not with his work, but I'm familiar. I know his name.
Yeah, he talks about that too. He wanted to be a guitarist, famous musician, and he very similar to your story. But he didn't really love that process or wanted to do that work to make that happen. And eventually he realized it wasn't for him, and he get bumped onto the path he's on now. And of course, massive success writing and blogging and stuff like that. Yeah,
definitely.
So can you share maybe a practice or a technique, something you've done or incorporated into your routine, your daily life that has caused you to have better experiences and experience life in a better way?
Something I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, really, that's come up for me, which has really began to move things along quite quickly for me. And it sounds simple, but basically it's to do with goal setting. And I think this kind of discovery that I had is that when you gain absolute clarity on what life is about, and you kind of detach from the drama of life and then go out and set a goal, you're in a hugely much more empowered position to align with something that the universe will support you in. So the process that I've used, and this is only something that I do maybe once, twice, 3 times a month. It's not something that I do every day. It's not necessary, but I'd either become very, very present through meditation, depending on how advanced you are at that, or go out on maybe a walk, go out in nature and just get very grounded, and just kind of use this mindset as I'm detaching from the drama of life. I'm here to learn. This human experience is, as much as it is about experiencing joy, I'm here to learn, and what goal can I set that will facilitate the most growth in me? And I did this. I literally just suddenly just thought, if I could do anything today, what would it be? And I said, I want to incorporate coaching into my life, and I'm hoping to turn my podcast as part of my coaching business. And I just kind of saw it with this absolute clarity, and I just said, the universe will support me. Let's just see what happens. And then immediately I opened up my emails and I got this email of a coaching certification, and the subject line was, "Is this your destiny?" And then all these things started coming into my life immediately. But the reason I was able to do that is because I detached from life, kind of the drama of life, temporarily. It's not a state that you would live in, but being able to do that either through meditation, breathing exercises, or maybe going out on a walk, and then ask yourself what goal would facilitate the most growth in me and would provide joy and adventure, and then just say, you can go through a process. I want to become a coach. I need to become a coach. I have to become a coach, and build up to this affirmation, I am becoming a coach. And that's my example. And then just let it go and just see what the universe brings you. But it's getting into that state of clarity before you set your goals is very powerful. So and detaching from the drama of life. It's something that you'll have to figure out, but it's very powerful if you can just choose goals without emotion, and that will facilitate growth and bring joy into your life.
I think that's a fantastic practice. And yeah, isn't that funny how the universe sends us what we need when we say we're ready for it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was so quick, literally within days, loads of things came into my life. But yeah, do it from a place of kind of detachment and clarity, and then see what happens. I
love that practice. Yeah. So speaking of the future of what you're doing in the podcast and other components you're going to add on, can you paint a picture and share some of the vision of what you've got in addition to the coaching? Well,
those are the the big thing. I mean, the coaching is the big thing. I'd be interested definitely in doing public speaking. That would be might be a bit later on down the line, but that's definitely something I want to get into, and I think it's a great way to spread your message. But I just kind of, that'll be a little bit further down the line, and really crafting a powerful message and kind of bundling up all that energy. The podcast will kind of act as a way to attract people into my coaching business, and also just, you know, part of my bigger goal of just raising spiritual awareness with the podcast. And then I'll be doing one-on-one coaching, I'm hoping, making courses, things like that, and just going from there really. So I'm very much in the process of kind of drilling down and figuring out exactly how I want to help people and in what way. But coaching and the podcast really are the big things for me at the moment. Yeah,
well, I can see initially, just, you know, I realize you're kind of just getting rolling here, but you've got a huge amount of momentum already, and that's why I'm excited to see some of the platforms you create and to put your content out there. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye on you. So where would you say people can best consume the podcasts right now?
Well, I'm in the process of setting up a website, which obviously that's not ready yet. It will be hopefully in the next month. But the easiest, I mean, if you're on iTunes, just search Rise of Humanity on iTunes. My podcast, the episodes play from a website called Shout Engine. So it's www.shoutengine.com/Rise of Humanity. And you can follow me on Instagram, always posting on there, and I'm posting all my episodes on YouTube as well. So just go on Chris Karamyar YouTube, and I've got all my episodes up on there as well. Yeah, I saw there's some up there. That's great. Yeah, because I'm gonna put all those links in the show notes to my podcast too, so people can go check them out. And well, Chris, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today and share your journey. Awesome. Yeah, appreciate it. I'm glad to be able to share this work with your listeners. Absolutely. Well, thanks so much. And to the listeners out there, until next time, all the best, health, wealth, and success. Bye-bye.